Do you ever feel like you're watching a movie and you already know the ending? You change the scenery, you change the jobs, you change the relationships. Sometimes you even change countries. And for a moment, something shifts. There's relief, there's hope. But after a while, the same feeling comes back. Not the same events, not the same people, the same inner tone underneath everything. It can feel like a loop, like you keep moving forward, but somehow you end up in the same place again and again. And many people start thinking, maybe this is my destiny. Maybe life is just hard. Maybe this is how life works. But what if nothing is wrong with you? What if you're not stuck? What if you're not failing at life? What if life is not repeating events, but reflecting a similar inner state you've been living in for a long time? From the inside, this often feels like inevitability, like life moves on one straight line, like there's only one possible direction things can go. You wake up already slightly tense, already preparing yourself emotionally, just in case. You start expecting certain outcomes, not because you want them, but because they feel familiar. And over time, this familiarity starts to feel like truth. When similar situations repeat, the mind looks for explanations. People say, that's just who I am. That's how relationships are. That's how money works. Or simply, this is my destiny. But notice something important here. When life feels fixed, when everything feels predictable, what quietly disappears is not hope, it's possibility. Not just as an idea, but as a feeling. Life starts to feel narrow, predictated, heavy, not because reality is against you, but because your inner system is already prepared for a certain version of your life. And this is where the confusion happens. It feels like you are reacting to life. But very often, life is responding to what you have already been living inside. Not as punishment, not just as reward, but just as reflection. There is a moment when something quietly changes. Not because you decided to change, not because you understood something new, but because you see. You start to notice a thought, not as a fact. Like it's not a prediction. It's not the truth about your life. It's a signal. It's a signal of the inner state you are in right now. Thoughts don't come from the reality. They come from the inside your experience. And most of the time, we don't notice this. A thought appears and we react and we build a story around it. We imagine how things will go wrong and we emotionally prepare ourselves and without realizing it, we start expecting that version of our reality. This is the subtle point most people miss. It's not the thought that gives shape to the future. It's the expectation we live in after this thought appears. Expectations has weight. It changes how you listen, it changes how you choose, how you move through your day. And slowly, life starts confirming what you were already prepared for. Not just because you caused it, not just because you manifested it, but because this is the state you were already living in. And here's the shift. This is not happening to you. This is something you have been living inside of. And there's no blame to it. No responsibility to fix yourself. It's simply a point of seeing. When you see it, something loosens. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You don't need to replace them with the better ones. You just need to stop. You just stop mistaking them for the reality itself. And in that moment, the loop weakens. Once a state becomes familiar, the body starts treating it as normal. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's painful, familiar doesn't mean good. It just means known. The nervous system is built to recognize patterns, not to search for happiness, not to search for success. So when a certain inner state has been repeated for a long time, tension, waiting, bracing, it starts to feel safe. Not safe as in pleasant, safe as in predictable. And from that place, your perception adjusts. You notice certain things more often. You hear some words louder. You read between the lines. Your choices become smaller, more careful, more reactive. Not just because you decided to limit yourself, but because your system is already prepared for a certain kind of experience. And life responds to that preparation. Not dramatically, not immediately. Quietly, through timing, through tone, through the kinds of situations that feel normal to enter. This is how repetition sustains itself. The familiar state keeps shaping perception. Perception shapes reaction. Reaction shapes choices. And choices slowly shapes the visible storyline of life. It's not fate. It's not punishment, it's a closed loop. And here's something important. Breaking this loop doesn't require effort. It doesn't begin with changing yourself or forcing a new attitude. The loop doesn't dissolve through control. It loosens through awareness. When a state is seen, not judged, not explained, it begins to lose its grip. Because what was unconscious no longer has the same power. You don't need to push yourself. You don't need to push yourself into a different state of being. You just stop being fully pulled by the old one. And that small shift creates space. So nothing here needs to be fixed. There is no version of you you need to become. No mindset to force. No behavior to correct. Sometimes change doesn't begin with doing something new or differently. It begins with noticing where you've been living from. Not to analyze it, not to improve it, just to see it. And when something is seen clearly, without pressure or judgment, it naturally starts to soften. You may notice moments when the old perception and expectation doesn't take over as strongly. Moments where there's a bit more space between a thought and a reaction. And that space matters. Not because it promises a different future, but because it changes how you experience the present. So life doesn't suddenly becomes perfect, but it becomes to feel less tight, less heavy. And from that place, things don't need to be forced. They begin to move on their own. So if something in that video felt familiar, not just as an idea, but as a feeling, let that be enough. You don't need to take this anywhere. You don't need to suddenly change your life. Just notice. Notice what you feel and how you move throughout the rest of your day.